And now, the survival show that once survived 7 seasons of making a survival show. In this episode, we look back on the season, share a personal update, look to the future, and answer some listener questions. Howdy, and welcome to In the Rabbit Hole's Urban Survival Podcast. This is episode number 255 and the season 7 finale. I'm your host, Aaron, and you are in the rabbit hole. Safe and sound. You know, this has been, hands down, the best run season for In the Rabbit Hole. I don't mean it's been the best season ever. I don't mean any of that stuff, but just from the back office sort of stuff, the stuff that y'all don't necessarily see, this has been the most organized season I2H has ever had. And things have been running so smoothly outside of, just stuff that happens in life that gets in the way, just like anything. I think this was the season where I finally really got some serious processes in place that have made the show so much easier to make. And it has reduced so much stress. And it's what has allowed this season to have more episodes than a season ever had before. And I think you're going to see a lot more of that going forward, and we'll get into that in a minute. But and I think the other thing too is that has allowed us to get into a lot more topics than we necessarily would have in the past with a single season. We've talked about personal finance, and we've gotten into Bitcoin and the robot revolution and what that's going to mean for jobs, and how that is going to come so fast and hit so many people so hard in the face. And, that is the kind of stuff that, it's not the big asteroids that are, the things that we usually need to worry about. It's the stuff that it's just the world changing, that upsets your life, or, the normal mundane stuff. We even got into some really deep, fascinating information about EMPs, and that was cool because it waited so long to find somebody that I felt was trustworthy and knowledgeable enough, and somebody who could really, from a sciencey way, actually explain what we would really expect from an EMP. And the funny thing is, if you listen to the episode, it's like, oh wow, it's the initial stuff is not as bad, but the end result is kind of just as bad. So but it was really quite fascinating. We dispelled a lot of myths, and that was fun. And we got into a lot of bug out stuff this season. We talked about bug out locations and bug out vehicles, and sort of bugging out from the everyday lifestyle and doing the RV lifestyle thing. And we got into your privacy and security. Well, not your private, but improving your privacy and security. We got into some really good firearms episodes this season that I think were so helpful, rather than just the normal, here are the tips, but it was more the big picture stuff. Like, how do you find a good school? Like, what are you really looking for, and ways to really judge those things? And then just some fun off the cuff conversations about, guns, because, well, guns. Hopefully we've introduced you to some cool new prepper fiction authors. I think the book club is fun. I'm not sure if the book club is going to stick around or not. There's some other stuff that maybe I want to try out in its place. Y'all let me know in the comments for this episode if you want me to keep around the book club episodes, but those may be going away. So you let me know. What does next season hold? This is funny. I was talking to a longtime listener and member of the Armada, and somebody who's become a good friend. And, he was throwing out some cool ideas, and we were going back and forth with some different stuff, because I was like, every summer I look for ways to make the show better. It's a different show. It's a completely different show than the way it started out, where, it was the story of 3 guys and their wacky adventures and trying to become survivalists and trying to become better at preparedness. And then life happened, and people had to reprioritize things. And so the whole show had to change. It had to improvise, adapt, overcome so that it could survive, right? I think this next season I'm going to start playing with the idea more like a TV series would, where there's a bigger overarching story happening and maybe some smaller things going on between, and having this thread that goes on and talking about, that might mean talking about some bigger things that can't be solved in a single episode. It's sort of the idea there. And I'm also from the back end, which, y'all don't get to hear about that much, but from the back end of the show, I'm actually looking at offloading the editing to a paid editor. This is somebody that I've used for a fairly long time through my marketing firm. She's a brilliant woman who she's much more talented at audio engineering than I am, and a good story editor too. It has a great ear for stuff like that. And so why would I just do that? Well, one thing, it's not cheap, so I've avoided doing it for a while, but editing sucks up about 80% of the time I have to dedicate to the show in a week. Just off the cuff numbers. These won't actually add up if you do the math, but for about every minute that gets aired, there was at least 4 to 5 minutes of post-production stuff that had to happen. So, an hour long show is between 4 to 6 hours worth of work on average on a normal episode that doesn't have a lot of problems, that doesn't need a guest that needs lots of help getting to a point, or maybe things are out of order and we've got to reorganize an entire show so that there's a better flow or things like that to make it as best as possible for y'all. That takes up a lot of time. And by offloading that, it does a few things. It reduces my stress, because it is the thing that, while I love the end product, it is the thing that causes me this most stress and aggravation. It's the thing that is honestly the least fun thing to do with this show. The most fun thing to do with the show is talk to really interesting people and wrestle with complicated topics and think about what comes next. What do we wrestle with next? What problems are we trying to actually solve here? That kind of stuff. And so by doing that, it means that I'd be able to dedicate a lot more time to making ITRH much better, more well thought out, more meaningful for y'all, and more beneficial, hopefully. It also means the show would be put in the right position to survive my wife and I having kids. There's some people that have questions about this. We'll come to that in just a bit when we get to sort of the personal section. But that has been on my mind for about the last year and a half, maybe 2 years, that, oh God, I work from home and everything else. And what is having a child going to mean to my free time and my ability to dedicate energy to the show and things like that? And so I've been thinking through and looking for ways to make sure that the show can survive the baby geddon. That's going to mean paying an editor. That's also going to mean that there are some other improvements, and y'all are going to start seeing ITRH growing as a business with a larger gear shop and a membership that is more compelling, and standalone, on-demand, topic-specific e-courses that are going to start being offered actually very soon. So if you're on the roving horde list, you'll start hearing about those and getting more information. But so let's get to the question that's on a lot of people's mind, which is, what's going on in my life? So why is the show ending a little bit early for a season and going into the summer breaks a little early? Well, someone recently said, wow, you sounded really upbeat in the last few episodes. It was really great. And I told him that was overcompensation. So that was me trying to just bring it, because it wasn't there on its own, my normal excitement level for doing the show. And so we are not pregnant. What happened was, about a couple of months ago, the short of it is, I lost my father recently. And the longer story is, literally 20 minutes after my mom and dad retired, after 50 some odd years of working together side by side, something happened with my dad's heart. It's kind of hard to explain, but it caused him to pass out. He then hit his head on a trailer hitch. He also happened to have been a heart patient, so he was on blood thinners. That then caused a massive brain bleed. And then we entered in a 53-day fight for his life. And we didn't know who was going to come out the other end of that, or if he was going to survive it. And that was tough. That was really tough because it was a lot of ups and downs and a lot of uncertainties and a lot of really low lows and a lot of really high highs. And so we dealt with that. And almost immediately after I lost my dad, I had taken Daisy, the tactical Weimaraner 2.0, in for just a regular annual checkup. And there had been some ongoing concern about some levels in her urine, but we thought it was an infection. And it turned out it was not an infection. After an ultrasound and a bunch of other expenses, it turned out one of her kidneys is just destroyed, and the other kidney is got 25% left. So basically, she's got 3 months to live is kind of where we're at with that. And that's just kind of, one piling things on there. And so that was really sad because we just, for one part, it sucks. We're losing our dog. But the other part, we just haven't had her that long. And I guess I've sort of adopted the sort of stoic philosophy approach to it, to trying to find the good. And as I told my wife, the dog, she was a rescue dog. She had a really shitty first 4 years to her life. She was just totally neglected, which is extra hard on a Weimaraner because they have real serious separation anxieties. They are bred to be a constant companion and a working dog. So they need work and they need constant companionship. And this dog never received any of that. I don't know if she was physically abused or what, but she was definitely neglected. And that is in part what led to the destruction of her bladder and her kidneys. And on the bright side, my wife and I have given this dog an amazing 1.5 years. Seriously. I mean, I would like to have this dog's life some days. She is spoiled rotten and well loved and well cared for. So that is the short version of what went on. And there are, particularly with my dad, that there's a lot of family stuff that need to be addressed, and estate things, and just need a break to decompress and, kind of wrestle with what has happened, and also wrestle with the dog. So I will be spending my summer dealing with all three of those things. Yes, that includes the first one that a lot of people thought was what was going on, but was not what was going on. So, and there's also some other projects, including finally finishing my reloading bench, which got completely put on halt when the world started spinning personally over here. Another question that I get is, what do I prepare for? Because I don't usually, I think it's been a long time since we've ever really talked about this. And usually, I get kind of a vague answer, and it's still sort of going to be a vague answer today, and it's supposed to be. And we've had a lot of new listeners coming in, so there's been an influx of this question a lot, and figured it would be a good thing to leave off with. So my answer has become whatever comes next. I really do try to take a much more holistic approach to looking at survival, and try to be independent from the big events, the asteroids, the zombie apocalypses, the Yellowstone, super volcanoes, the EMPs, whatever. Pick your poison there. Meaning, I worry about preparedness as a whole. So that means securing basic needs in case of a localized disaster. Food, water, medicine, things like that. Securing my family financially for when weird things happen, as they do. Focusing more of my energy on the mundane stuff, really. That some people often, and this cracks me up, a lot of people will call this the mundane stuff. Oh, that's just common sense, which is usually a sure sign that someone has no common sense. And I've also found that it usually means they also have not themselves nailed those down, and it's the shit that they're most ignoring. And it's the stuff that I've really been working on to nail those down. And, even just stupid stuff like making sure my wife knows how to change the air filter in case something happens to me, because, there's all these things that I just take care of. And my wife takes for granted that I take care of, stuff as stupid as changing the air filter in an AC system. And if you've ever spent any time with, the mechanical systems and stuff like that, it's really, it's a good way to wreck an AC system, and AC systems aren't cheap. And if something ever happened to me, it's those little things of questioning, like, does she know how to do this? I mean, she's the youngest child of 5 and the only girl. So draw your conclusions. Now, she's a very smart, very independent woman and everything, but there's a lot of stuff where she's just used to people just doing things. It is the stuff where you're like, oh, that's common sense, but most people just don't, and you get the point. I also look at evaluating long-term solutions for the big stuff, but I'm always trying to make sure that I'm not going down a dark rabbit hole that has no ending. And I also try to make sure that it's stuff that benefits me in the here and now. So, and we've talked about this in the bug out location episodes. Like, I would never buy a bug out location. I would buy a weekend property, a vacation property, and I would make sure the property was set up properly as a bug out location. But the likelihood is that I'm going to get more enjoyment out of it as a vacation property than I would ever need to flee there to get away from the zombie apocalypse or, zombie platypus apocalypse or whatever. That means I focus 80% on the likely to happen and only devote a small amount of attention to the really big, scary stuff. So what actually does concern me that keeps me in prep and all these other things? Well, there is the mundane stuff. And then really one thing that my big worry, my tinfoil hat, is the long tail big picture aspect of where society is headed. And this is a topic we really haven't gotten into in a long time. But for me, it's one of the original issues and one of the original topics we used to talk about a lot that still really worries me, because we seem to be on this very dangerous path where we're inching further and further towards worldwide tyranny rather than liberation or freedom. And it's the people around the world begging for it and okay with it. And then there's this small group of us going, whoa, 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 whoa. We're advancing, we're evolving. Shouldn't we be moving towards more freedom rather than less? Like, why are we going backwards here? If you look into the works of Pinkerton and some others, it's like, well, while we see a lot more crap going on, the world is actually becoming safer. So why are we? And I think we can kind of get into that with what just happened in England. And I don't usually like stepping into the business of other countries and stuff. I don't like it when people talk about, Canadians talk about the US or whatever. But this one really concerned me because in a lot of ways, England is where we tend to head with things. And the stuff with Alfie Evans really just, 1, broke my heart, 2, scared the living crap out of me. And I think the thing that people miss when they're begging for this kind of stuff and crying out for these things is that when it comes to what the government does, it's never about health, or it's never about your health or welfare. It's about control and compliance of a people. I mean, that is the job of government, and governments, any chance they can to look busy, and they don't look very busy by taking away the rules and regulations. How do they look busy? They look busy by piling more shit on and giving themselves more control and creating a class system. Watching the dad, and it kind of came out that the doctors were saying, well, when their attitude improves, we'll let them take their child home. So, it had nothing to do with the welfare of the child. It was everything about the state asserting its control and its power. And like I was saying a second ago, watching the dad speak was like something out of 1984. How many legs does it have? How many arms does it have? And he's over there like, twiddling his thumbs and just, please don't beat me. Please let me have my child. This is what single payer healthcare systems look like. Control over who lives and dies, control over how and when you die, and the removal of nearly all choice whatsoever. People are like, oh, well, I get all this free stuff. No, you didn't get it free. You've been paying through the nose for it. And you also gave up your choice. You don't have the choice to go see the doctor you want to. You don't have the choice to say, I'm ready to have this surgery right here and now. Who's going to do it for me? That was when I needed to have my back surgery. I had choice of who was going to do it. And working into their schedule, it was when it was going to do it. And the doctor was like, come on, I got a free time 2 weeks from now. How do you feel about, having your back rearranged and filled with titanium in a week? And I was like, all right, sure, let's do this thing. People think that these sorts of social programs, be it one payer system, be it whatever, that they level the playing field. They really don't. All it does is serve to actually widen the gap, because it gives some basic services to people who probably could have afforded them on their own, but now it's a responsibility they don't have to think about and deal with, so they get it. But the wealthy don't stay in those systems and that crap. The wealthy go into private systems and pay cash for things because they can, and that gap just keeps widening bigger and bigger. And ultimately, it does the one thing it's supposed to do, which is give the government more control. I think for an extreme example of this, we can kind of look at what's going on in China. I don't think that would ever really come here, or at least certainly not in several generations. But so China, and I'll make this quick, and I'm going to give some links that people can go read about it. But China has introduced a personal score to purify society. The tagline for their social credit system: keeping trust is glorious and breaking trust is disgraceful. Right? That really sounds like something that would come either right out of 1984 or This Perfect Day. In a nutshell, it's a big data approach to influencing behavior and controlling a population through a carrot and stick strategy. It's a social credit score. It is coupled with a wide net of, I believe it's 176 million surveillance cameras, constantly feeding this system with data about all of the citizens in China. It's meant a few kind of crazy things. So travel for 15 million it has already been barred. And the system's not even been fully rolled out nationwide. It impacts what kind of jobs you can have. It this one's crazy. It impacts your dating life. It impacts your ability to buy property in China. What schools your kids can go to. What rate you pay for electricity. Access to the internet. Yeah, the censored internet, but still access to the internet. The question starts to become, okay, well, that's the start, and it's pretty Orwellian in nature, but how long till it gets to impacting people's access to food and medicine, medical care? Like, well, you've been naughty, you've been saying things we don't like, or doing things we don't like, talking to people we don't like, so maybe you don't need access to as many calories as you think you do. Maybe you don't need that knee replacement or whatnot. They expect the system to be fully implemented and countrywide, covering every citizen by 2020. And what was funny, the first time I read that, I was like, oh, 2020, that's a long way off. And then I was like, oh, wait, no, it's 2018. So the problem of thinking in, what date it is when you're in your 40s, you're like, oh, that's a long way off. Oh, no, that's like, it's a year and a half away. Crap. So yeah, that's kind of terrifying, isn't it? China is the extreme end, but you look at London, and it's covered in cameras, and I guess the questions as governments start looking at that, going, wow, that seems like a really good way of keeping a lid on things, and staying in control and making sure people behave appropriately. Why do I care about all this? It's not my backyard. I've kind of already talked about this a second, but just to put a head on things and move forward. I look at these two examples as a looking glass. We're seeing something I would have, if you told me this 20 years ago, I wouldn't have believed you. It's like someone sat down with the books 1984 and This Perfect Day, which sadly most people have not read. Want a good book, read This Perfect Day. To me, it's better than 1984. But anyway, then they picked out all the parts that you would think, okay, this could actually work, and then mashed them together. Not in the final stage, mind you, but a slow journey towards it. You know, and it's people are already crying out for the stuff to come here. Single payer healthcare, I think, has an approval of like 46%. Like, think about that for a minute. 46% in the United States. People are asking for that. People are, you know, guaranteed incomes and jobs. Like, what? Taking away guns, and somehow that's magically going to make us all safer. Apparently that's Pope thinks, and we should just all get rid of our guns. Yeah, you first. They want safety, or really they want the perception of safety over liberty. They're saying, just make me feel better and I'll give you whatever you want. And they want banned books and banned speech and ban anything that hurts my feelings or makes me uncomfortable. Somehow that has become on par with a physical assault. And somehow bullying is now totally acceptable as long as it's in the name of social justice warriors. What do we do about it? It's a good question. Tune in September. We'll start talking about this. Till then, summer shorts start now. Show notes from this episode and other resources can be found by going to intherabbithole.com/E255. Support the show and get ITRH Roving Horde Armada members-only benefits. Go to itrh.net to become part of the Roving Horde Armada. One of the biggest things, the thing that, you know, everybody looks and they go, oh, that looks like some really great stuff in that membership, some really cool benefits. And that's what tends to gets people's attention. But what's interesting is that it's really the community that people stick around for. And part of that is the twice a month members only virtual private hangs. These are a chance to hang out with me and other like-minded everyday preppers to discuss whatever's on your mind. You know, the tinfoil kind of stuff that you just can't talk about with anybody else, or just the fact that you're a prepper. And the other thing, too, is that we now have a private ITRH Armada Slack workspace where we get to chat with each other all day long, and it's not on Facebook. So that's a huge plus. You get other stuff like the on-demand bug-out bag class and special prepper spreadsheets, just to name a few things. And you get discounts to the ITRH Gear Shop and other participating vendors. You also get access to every episode ever made. Go to itrh.net to become part of the Roving Horde Armada. Again, that's itrh.net to find out more about exclusive members-only benefits. With that, we wrap up episode number 255 and season 7 from the Lone Star State. Till the next time, stay safe and sound.